Tutty.
What's up, everybody? All right, today we're working on some tuts.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with some pretty basic shapes. I think before we start off, it's important to kind of describe what tutting is for the first timers. If you've never seen it, tutting is an art form that specifically focuses on angles, usually right angles created within relationships of body parts. Usually they end up creating boxes, right? So obviously this is a very common beginner sort of scenario in which you can practice seeing the relationships of how to move both of your arms and create the illusion that we're moving this box, folding from different points. But today, I think instead, I've seen a lot of teachers talk about that sort of stuff. So if you want to learn about that, you can find another video. I think today I want to focus on basically finding out how to move with those kinds of angles. Because once you have this, if you dance, you might not know how to incorporate that into your body or into your dance style. So I want to work on a couple, maybe picking some shapes that we like, and then finding ways to move with those shapes, yeah? So basically, I want to talk about tutting in terms of two different kinds of movement. All tuts, if this is my tut and this is my tutting angle, all tuts fall into the category of one of these two categories. Change in form, so the idea that this angle is changing, this interior angle that's creating the 90 degree angle is going to change, right? That is a change in form. Then there is something I like to call change in context, which is just the idea of moving this same angle. Notice how this angle does not change, but I can move it in a few different directions. Even if I'm over here, right? All of this is change in context. So you don't even have to change the angle you're using. It's really just taking that one angle and being able to move it around. Right? That's like a really simple way to kind of continuously do that.
This, right?
Yeah, but before we really get into like that kind of a place, let's work on. I want to talk about. So I just said change in form, change in context. There's one other sort of piece of information that I want to add before we go into an exercise. I want to put both those things together, because change in form, change in context, yeah, you kind of get it, but let's make it mean something that's tangible so that people can kind of understand this more clearly. Pretty much most, 99% of actual tutting movements have three kinds of movement that fall into one of those categories: a change in form, a change in context. So those three movements are hinge, right? You've got some kind of a slide, right? You're moving it in a direction usually defined by the direction one of your body parts is facing within the angle, right? So I can move it right and left because my hand is right and left, and up and down. Those make sense. We're not going to go into diagonals, but if we were doing diagonals, you could do the same concept that way because both your forearm and your hand are moving in those directions, right? They're already facing those directions. So what I want to do, just so we can start showcasing just moving a tut through one particular space, we're going to fixed point something, and I want to fixed point a tut. I'm going to fixed point my hand through it, and I'm going to allow myself to move. That's a slide. Now I can hinge through it, and I can slide again. Now I can rotate that and slide, right? So you see how I'm using slide, hinge, and rotate through one fixed point. Yep, so this is the fixed point, just representing the finger. And then I'm able to actually move around it.
That's a cool exercise.
Right?
Now moving the fixed point.
And it's just the idea of can you manipulate your arm in a angular fashion, and you're going to learn to use slides, rotations, and hinges in like the 3 most common elements of pretty much all tutting movement to be able to do that. Now, as you're doing this, take care that to make sure that if your arm is flat, that it is not slightly at an angle, right? If I'm moving through this particular point, I want to create a flat surface so that when I actually shift for a hinge, right, that we have a nice 90-degree angle. We don't always have to, in tutting, you don't always have to use 90-degree angles, but when you start out, it's good to be clean, and 90-degree angles are really simple and really easy to tell if you've got them or not.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're like, kind of here, and it's like, there it is.
And a good way to like keep that angle is to be aware of where your arm is and where the floor is. So having that 90-degree like flat surface, not perpendicular, parallel to the floor will keep that like arm in hand. You know? So
That makes sense. But
So that's kind of the idea, is just being able to, don't let your arm leave that point. So I know sometimes we can leave it and do that, but that's going on to the next level of it, which is actually moving the fixed point you're using, right? So as much as you can, try and see what it's like to actually move through that point. And you can use your whole arm, you can use just your hand and your wrist. If you really want to, you can use your knuckles, right? Just like little pieces there.
oh, I see.
Right? The whole time I'm just focusing on that one point and moving my arm angularly through that. Also make sure that you're doing both arms. Because it's very easy to just like, oh yeah, I got this. And then you go and try to tut with your other arm. At some point you're like, I did not practice that.
So why does this one feel so weird?
So being able to do that this way too.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great like step down from like what I teach people, was using this hand to like not like think about and using it to move these body parts.
Yeah.
So you're only focusing on the textures and the cleanness of just one arm.
Yes.
Instead of, you know, messing up your brain trying
Yeah.
to use two hands to make
Yeah,
angles.
and that would be the next progression, right? I feel like once you can understand how to move it through one point that doesn't move, right? The next thing is adjusting that constant. So now, as you're doing this, allow the fixed point that you're using to move. So if it's here, now I'm going to move it here, and I'm going to repeat that process,
Oh, I see.
right? So now I can just continuously work through this until I'm ready to move that point again, right?
Oh shoot.
Now I'm just using change in context. So I'm moving that fixed point. And then I can continue to just move through that one point like we were talking about. Right? So I'm using, and if you notice, I'm using like all parts of my body to kind of like create like these sorts of like angles.
Hinge, slide, and rotation.
Just show sliding. This is, so here's fixed point. Sliding is here. So if I'm doing just slides, this is, that would be a rotate, but this is a slide. And I can stop at my wrist, knuckle, fingertip. I can stop at my elbow. If I'm really committed, I can stop at my shoulder, right? Because you have all of that space that you can use.
Yeah.
And then if we're just talking about hinges, you can hinge at all those same points. So I can, oh, this is technically a rotate. And I would say the difference between a hinge and a rotation is how close it is to your wrist. Because most of the time it's like, technically this is a hinge in your shoulder.
Right.
But the
compared
context,
to the body, it looks like a rotation.
the context of the tut that I'm specifically focusing on is here, by the wrist, right? So, so having like a rotation, that's just, this part is rotating, right? But yeah, so I would be my fixed point is here. But then if I wanted to hinge, that's a hinge. This is also a hinge.
That's really
because it's adjusting this angle, the angle by the wrist. So both of these are hinges. And then technically I can rotate this forward and now I can hinge this way. So I'm actually able to continue that same concept and show different variations of hinges. If you continue to adjust that, you can go in a circle. So here's a hinge concept that goes completely in a circle. So we can move here, and this hinges up. Then this hinges and goes back. And then this is here, right? So I do a lot of this sort of stuff, right?
And that's where other body dexterities come in.
Yeah, that's
different
where you can
angles.
add
That's
a lot of
crazy.
dynamic into your tutting, right? And if you notice, the concepts we're using are still really simple. Hinge, slide, and rotate. Super simple. It's however much you want to put into it that's going to affect your outcome, right?
Damn.
So it's just-
I didn't
so-
even know this one, man.
So it's just working with what you already
Learning.
like feel comfortable with. So it's like you don't have to like know every like box position or whatever, right? To do all that, as long as you can kind of understand how to move your body or little parts of yourself through one point, then you can kind of figure out the idea of what the movement feels like, and then you can start moving that around in place, right? Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I'm following your lead, man. This is
Oh,
all
all right.
super new to me. I'm trying to learn as well.
Okay, here's a really great. So now you. I don't know if you wanted to try keep working on that. We can move on. So once we have like this concept, right?
Yeah.
We talked about moving the fixed point, so to speak. So that's moving this actual point, the part that we're taking out. There's a super basic concept of like where am I going to move that fixed point? There's already a pre-existing idea referred to as the four corners, very loosely. And it's just the idea of basically this space, this space, this space, and this space. Just kind of really obvious spaces in your area, still within your vision, right? But something that is going to be really easy to, it's going to be really noticeable. There's a lot of contrast between all these areas. They're not like that close, but they're also not that far away from you, right? So it should be within
It's just a comfortable 4 spots,
yeah.
4 corners.
So the idea is you can take, let's say you have a box, right? If we're at a point where we have a box, and this thing that we were doing earlier kind of already hits the 4 corners, but let's take that concept and just focus on one box, right? Because we don't have to just do this, right? If we're going 4 corners, we can also go here, right? And I'm just turning this, yeah? And I can flip this way. And now if I wanted to go the same direction here, I can go down this way. Boom, 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 boom. And if you notice, I did not change the box the entire time. It's literally, that's all change in context. I'm just taking a tut and moving with it. So if there's a shape that you like, you don't have to use a box. If you like this, you can do the exact same thing here, 4 corners. Notice how I'm able to move this shape in all of these different places. And if I wanted to diversify it, like change how the variety of what shape I'm actually using, I can just drop that and adjust from here, right?
It's too much bodies.
And the whole time I'm in this one locked position. I have not changed any form whatsoever. It's all change in context, because that's gonna come later. It's good to know how to dance with one form first. So if I'm here and I can just move with this,
Dang. And you still have the option to break it apart.
Yeah.
Like, whenever you want.
And the idea is now I feel like I can dance, I can move, I can flow. Whether you're hip hop or popping or whatever it is that you want to do, this allows you to start dancing with whatever style you're doing with a shape. You're including a shape into your dance, and then from there, you're going to start feeling, oh, I want to change the shape here. And you'll start being able to figure out, oh, I like this change. I like that change. And it's going to feel more natural as opposed to like, I have to memorize all of these boxes now in order to get...
Oh, yeah. I like it that way. this one, I feel like I'm just doing the homework so much.
Yeah.
It's a lot of memorization.
Don't wanna start
and
dancing.
don't get me wrong, some of the boxes are actually really cool and super useful if you can use them. But if the homework feels not fun, you're not going to enjoy it, right? And I'm a big fan of like, I'm a huge believer that if the technique you're trying to learn can be fun and interesting, then that's the fastest way to get students to learn.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's the fastest way to improve in general.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying it.
And this technique scales. Like we've been talking about simpler concepts for people who are like maybe earlier in their like tutting vocabulary, but if you feel like there's something like specific that you want to work with as an advanced tutter, and you want to just try and find all the different ways that you can use that one shape, then it scales with whatever concept you throw into it. So like if you have like a really crazy concept, if you like, I don't know, I'm not probably warmed up, but if you like chicken wing stuff, or if you have like a bone break that you want to do, it works the same way.
Yeah.
And then you'll start being able to like dance and move through all those kinds of concepts.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's definitely about finding the shape that you like.
Right.
And then being able to go different places with it.
Oh shit. Do you have any questions?
No, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that was a good clock tut.
What's that?
I get it.
Good.
Yeah, that was
that's,
awesome.
That's probably like the introduction to tutting that I think is probably going to set you up on your way. Hope you guys enjoy. Happy tutting, everybody.
All right, David.